standing on the precipice of the next chapter of your life, the one that's traditionally called retirement, but now is a little bit more vague, can often be both thrilling and daunting. On one hand, you've got more time to do all of the stuff you've been dying to do in this chapter. The travel, the hobbies, the increased amount of time with people you love and like. But on the other hand, there's a nagging doubt, a worry which doesn't seem to want to go away. Will the money last? A recent UK study found that 3/4 of people with pension pots, defined contribution pension savings, felt they weren't on track to have enough money in that pot for a decent standard of life. However, what if I told you, rather surprisingly, that there are several Buddhist philosophies that can really help us think about money in a different way, which might help us think about the next stage of our lives in a slightly financially healthier way. Welcome to What Happens Next. Now, it might sound surprising, but Buddhist philosophy has a lot to teach us about financial anxiety and finding money peace of mind. You see, the Buddhists, while having a number of beliefs and a fairly deep number of things we can learn from their philosophical teachings, were also realists. They recognise the fact that we need to live in the material world. And actually, most Buddhists live in that world and still share Buddhist philosophies. There's only a handful, actually, the devout Buddhist monks who renounce all their worldly goods, who live less materially. You see, it's interesting because even though we don't think of the Buddhists in this way, they encouraged us to think about what financial freedom means to us, but also caring for our responsibilities as a society and community and doing things that made collectively the world a better place. And this is why I think it's interesting, because I think the Buddhists have a unique insight in their teachings about the importance of practicing non-attachment to wealth. Of course, it's healthy to do the right things with your money, understand that money is a tool to live your life, and enjoying your money is important. We need to recognise that actually having all of our identity tied up in the amount of wealth we've got isn't a particularly helpful way to live. One core teaching in Buddhism is that suffering often comes from grasping and attachment. When we hold on too tightly to anything, including the idea of financial certainty, we set ourselves up for stress. As Buddhist writers noted, it isn't actually about how much money you've got, it's how you feel about money. The quote that I love is, grasping isn't about how much we have, it's satisfied when the heart isn't grasping. Because a person with modest savings can feel content, while a millionaire and billionaire may still feel there's a gap in their lives. Because the reality is no amount of money will ever feel enough unless the mind thinks it is. In our previous video, we spoke about how mindset is such an important part of our financial well-being. Often part of the challenge we face in an individualistic society is the messages we get are all about not having enough materially. Even if we've got enough, we think it's not enough. However, I know both in my own life and in the work we do with clients, you can understand what enough looks like for you. I think there's two parts of that process. Firstly, it's getting clear on the facts. Look at your number, look at what enough looks like for you. And you can do that with a financial planner, but actually there's a video which we'll put a link in the comments to that will help you do a ready reckoner so that you can work out what enough works for you. Because having a plan, even if you've not reached financial independence yet, gives you one thing that's really important: clarity. Now, do that with a financial planner or do it yourself using the ready reckoner that I've recommended you do that. But it's also important to look at the second part, and that's the stories we tell ourselves about money. The reality is that most of our fears, financial or not, are a bundle of thoughts, feelings, and more importantly, stories we tell ourselves. Some stories help us do things in our lives. Others might be designed to protect us. Others simply might do us no favours at all, but because we've believed them for years, they think they're the truth. And I'd suggest that one of the important things that you can do to move forward is question the stories you tell yourself about your life, but also about money. Now, I've done some amazingly insightful interviews with the likes of Chris Daems, Catherine and Dennis, all about the stories we tell ourselves about money and how we can get better at that relationship with money. I'd suggest you definitely check those out, and the links to all those interviews will be in the comments. Because the reality is, when you've got financial clarity, even if you're not achieving full financial independence yet, together with a positive money story, you can achieve one thing a lot more earlier than normal, and that's a feeling of enough. Even if you're not enough financially yet, having a clear plan and taking the incremental actions towards it can make you feel better earlier than doing nothing at all. Now, as we're on the stories we tell ourselves about money, I want to cover off one particular Buddhist related topic, and that's neutrality. You see, the Buddhists didn't consider money to be bad or good. Material wealth in Buddhism is a neutral tool, like a hammer, and it's got the ability to be used skillfully or unskillfully. Because money, at its best, can help us live the lives we want and support the ones we love to do the same. Money can also clearly be used for the opposite, but my experience is most people want to use money as a tool to live the life they want and support their families. So my one question I'd ask is, how do I use my accumulated wealth to live the life I want? That's a really important question for you to ask. And how do I use my money hammer, my tool that is money, for good, either for me, my family, or the broader community? And what's the next practical step I need to take in order to do that? The other Buddhist tradition I want to talk about is Sangha, which means community. No man is an island. We don't go through these journeys alone. And it's really difficult, I've found, to build your own financial plan because you are biased. Even if you're smart, you're going to be biased. Firstly, when you're building your financial plan, talk to the people who the financial plan is going to impact. Your partner, your kids. Potentially, if you want an independent viewpoint from people who are close to you, but it's not going to affect them, you might want to ask your friends and colleagues for a bit of support. Sometimes a casual chat over the conversation about money is really important to have, can reveal new ideas, or at the very least reassure you that your anxieties are shared. If you've got grown children, I'd recommend you start a money conversation with them too, because my experience is that having a decent money conversation with your adult kids relieves a little bit of pressure and allows that conversation to flow better. Professionally, if you want to understand money or you want to support around money, there's a bunch of resources, many of which is for free. There's retirement planning workshops, there's education seminars, there's online forums for retirees, as well as paid for professional help. You can get specific advice. And I'd suggest that getting help, understanding that no man is an island, and making sure you've got the help you need to live the life you want in this next chapter of your life is going to be important. There's a lot the Buddhists can teach us about living the right life with our money and doing it in a way that makes us more happy and improves our well-being. Firstly, understand that money is a useful tool, but over-attachment can be psychologically or emotionally healthy. One way to avoid that emotional attachment is understand that money is simply a tool designed for us to do one thing: use it so we can live the lives we want. Therefore, the stories we tell ourselves about money are often unhelpful, and that's why it's worth examining the stories we tell ourselves so we can reframe them in a more positive light. And lastly, don't do it alone. Get help when it comes to money. Speak to the ones you love or get professional help. virtually every philosophy for thousands of years understands the importance of a trusted community supporting you to make decisions, including the Buddhists. So if you need help to clarify your plan, it's worth speaking out and getting it. For more information on why mindset, as I mentioned earlier, is so important, you can click this video here. And I talked earlier about the amazing interview we did with a lady called Catherine Morgan, all about the relationships we have with money, and you can find that there. Hopefully that's useful. Have a lovely day, and we'll see you on the channel soon.